Hey guys, Kev here, and I want to do my full review on the Pena X Series Lanny's clip flipper. So, as you guys know, I have reviewed the Pena Lanny's clip front flipper, which is one of my favorite Penas. It's one of the ones that's stuck in my collection for a while here. I ended up having two of them and swapping parts and stuff to make it look like this, and man, I love this knife very, very much. And you can see the similarities here. It's just this one's a lot taller and it's a flipper, and this one's shorter and it's a front flipper. But you can see the blade shape resembles, it's the same, it's just a little bit different in terms of size. So I just wanted to point that out. I love this knife. This was loaned into me by Jamie from Jamie Loves Knives on Instagram. I suggest you check him out. I'll link him below. He has some awesome knives. He's going to be sending me a Rockstead to check out next, which I am over the moon about. I really have been trying to check out a Rockstead. So anyway, let's get into the Lanny's clip flipper. So this is an older knife. I believe this has been out for a few years now because it's in S35 EN. And I don't remember it dropping. You can see there S35 and then Pena X Series on this side. My kind of overall, like, just to start this off with some thoughts on this knife, is that it's extremely well built, well designed. So Riot is the OEM on this. It's designed exceptionally well by Pena. It has a compound grind. You guys know I love that stuff. It's got carbon fiber and titanium, and it's got a bolster lock and lots of lots of things that I love. But yet it excites me almost zero. I don't know what it is about this knife. It just does not excite me. Whereas that other Pena I just showed you, I'm over the moon excited about it. Or this Chavez knife. That's, you know, Riot made, compound grind. It's like Chavez's X Series, right? This knife excites me very much. And the list goes on, right? But for some reason, this knife just doesn't. I don't know what it is. I think, to me, it might be the fact that it's kind of like, it's just a fatter version of the front flippers that he does. And I really like how streamlined and thin and sleek those front flippers are, and this kind of like goes against that somehow. And in my head, it's like, I don't like it because of that. I don't know what it is, guys. I'm trying to talk through it here. I got a little bit of LaCroix in my Yeti. Yeah, so I don't know. Hard to explain, but that's kind of my reasoning. It's exceptional, guys, and if this design speaks to you, hell yeah, it's worth it, right? And I'm way behind the game on this knife, but I just thought it was nice that he loaned it to me. So obviously I want to do the review in general, so it's not really about like, go get one, right? Because I don't even know if you could right now. I know Knife Joy just dropped the Pena X Series Mini Diesel, similar sort of knife. They dropped an exclusive of that, which I almost picked up, but I didn't. Yeah, so let's get into it. Aesthetics. So that's the thing, right? What I was just saying. It's kind of like a fatter, it's not too fat, a fatter version of the front flippers. And I think for people who like flippers over front flippers, and who like bigger knives, this is a home run, right? Makes more sense to me. It does have these blue anodized accents on the hardware, and I do not like that. Something about that screams like cheap to me. I don't know what it is. It's the same thing that We does. Excuse me. It's the same thing that We does on some of their knives. Like, this is the Sakshi, or Sushi as BT calls it. And it has this blue anode liners. And to me, and the pivot, to me, that just looks cheap. It's like you've cheapened your knife by doing that. And this has a similar effect in my mind. It's not as bad because they didn't go with like full fucking blue liners like that knife. But they did do something, right? And I don't like that much. I love the Lanny's clip blade. I don't like how tall it is. I like the slim down front flipper version of it. And maybe it's just because I'm used to that knife and that's what this is all about. I don't know. The finish on the titanium, the marbled carbon fiber, the 3D milled clip, it all looks absolutely fantastic. The fuller on the blade looks great. Aesthetically, yeah, this is a sexy looking knife, and that's one of the problems I have with this knife we'll get to. It's a sexy looking knife, it's just not for me. That's just the way for me to put this category. Ergonomics. So it's a smaller knife that it's kind of deceptive to me. I see it and I'm like, oh yeah, it's kind of like a big knife, right? But you get it in hand, and I have a large glove-sized hand, and it's just barely fitting on here. It's kind of uncomfortable cramping up into that flipper tab right there. I can't really spread out. You can't really do the choil thing. I mean, you can, but this one's kind of dangerous. It's really pokey right there. I didn't realize that when I did my first impressions. But you could definitely cut yourself pretty easy on that, so I would back off of that. Yeah, it's comfortable. But I think if you have a medium or small hand, this would be really nice. I think the curvature is good. Neutral, in other words. Very, very comfortable right-handed. The clip doesn't bite you at all. It's a flat clip. So I think the smaller your hand goes compared to mine, the better these ergos are going to get. But it's like okay for me, right? Yeah, so the carry... You have a 3D milled titanium clip. Pretty standard affair here. Goes in pocket, out of pocket, no problem. It's not a thick knife this way, but it's taller, I guess. I'm always going to compare this to my front flipper. It's just how it's going to be. And it obviously doesn't carry like that does. That carries like a dream because you don't have a flipper tab and it's not as tall. But it does carry well. You do have this much sticking out of your pocket, so keep that in mind. Cutting, you have that compound grind. It cuts very well. It's a Riot knife. I don't know how much Jamie has used it, but it seems sticky sharp. It's well done. It does have a recurve, a pretty substantial one, and I think that would scare people away. I think he kind of fixed that, so to speak. On this knife right here, you might have the ever so slightest recurve. I don't even know if you do. And that's a big difference for a lot of people. If you're going to be resharpening this knife, you probably prefer it be like this, not like this. So that's another thing that goes towards the front flipper. On top of it, it's just sexier. It's just sexier, guys. Are they the same size? We should check, sorry. No. So the flipper is a bigger knife as well. So you're maybe 3.5 inches on this guy on the blade. This is 3.15. So this could be 3.3, 3.5, something like that. I don't think it's 3.5, is it? I don't care. Anyway, cutting is good. It has a hollow grind back here, flat at the front. It's a very minimal flat grind up there. Normally on those compound grinds, like on the Chavez, you get a little bit more up here on that flat grind. It's a little bit longer. See how much shorter that is? I don't know if that's because of the clip point or what, but I don't know if you can see what I'm talking about, but that's a thing. But yeah, it cuts great. It makes sense. It has that trailing point, so just like my front flipper, cutting labels out, not the best, but it does work. You can angle it down and get in there, kind of like a drop point. A little more work than a drop point. You have a relatively strong tip, honestly, for what it is. It looks like it should be much more dainty, but it's not. Let me think. Sounds. So they're good. I mean, it's a Riot knife with a bolster lock and carbon fiber inlays or scales, whatever you want to call it. There's no milling internally, so that's just what you're going to get. You're not going to get thundering sounds out of this because of the construction. It's definitely serviceable. I would call it a 5 or a 6, right? Just average, maybe slightly above. Action. So this is where this knife, for me, falls a bit short compared to that front flipper. And I hate to keep comparing it to that, but I will in a second. I should just keep it out. Just keep it out. So you have this flipper tab here. You can see here the jimping starts up at the top and rounds down the side. And it's kind of like flat right here, which is interesting. So the push button is very good. It's very satisfying to push button this knife. Flies out of there. Riot, guys, nails the detent on everything 95% of the time. The light switch, which is my preferred method with a flipper, it works. It works fine. I don't have any issues with the flipper tab on this knife. I just prefer the top flipper, front flipper on this knife. It's just what I've gotten used to with the X series knives. You can Bic lighter, flick it, and it's absolutely a pleasure to do. You can do the reach around flick on this guy, also a pleasure. And yeah, on this guy you have a fuller, and this is where I get a little bit rubbed the wrong way with this knife. I just can't get in there well enough to consistently flick it out. If I like shove my finger down and push out, I can get it. But I usually have to do it on the side like that. If I try to do it vertically like this, see what I mean? Like I can't get it out. Now this has a fuller. Why didn't they chamfer it a little bit and put a little bit of an edge on there so that people could get in there and use the thing, right? I guess I just did it there, but like you're just not getting great purchase on it. Whereas here on this front flipper, this doesn't have a fuller at all, and I can dig in and flick it out, no problem. I can do it vertically, no problem. So why is it that a knife with no fuller can flick better than a knife with a fuller? I'll tell you why, okay? There is an answer. It's the detent. So on a front flipper, you have less of a detent. They have to have a relatively light detent on a front flipper. Now this one here, I personally have tuned a little bit to be strengthened. Fanatic Edge actually, I think he actually weakened it a little bit when he did the mods on these because he thought it was too strong. And then when I got it, I thought it was kind of weak. So I strengthened it. And now, to me, it's perfect. I can do the front flip. I can do, I can do the middle finger flick. I can do the reach around flick. You know, and yeah, that one's a little harder because of it, but I'd rather have that than it be too light. I just need it to clack out, and it does. Thunders out. This, because it's a flipper, they have to strengthen the detent. That's just how it works. Flippers have stronger detents than thumb stud knives. Flippers have stronger detents than front flippers. Front flippers are known for having weaker detents on purpose. So I'm not saying it's a universal rule, like don't leave messages that your one knife has a flipper that's super weak and your thumb stud knife is, you know. Universally, the thinking, right, that should make sense to people is stronger detent on a flipper, a little bit softer on the thumb stud, and then even softer than that on a front flipper. That's kind of the consensus, right? It's not going to hold true on everything. But that's why I think it's harder for me, even with the fuller, to consistently do that reverse flick because there's just a stronger detent on this than on this. And they're different knives, obviously, so take that into consideration. But anyway, I just wish I could just go, wapow, and flick it out, right? But I gotta think about it, dig in, and really flick, right? And so it kind of kills it for me. But it's ultimately a really cool knife. Closing action. I did take this apart and clean it and everything, and I kept it tight because I figured it'll wear in a little bit, and I didn't want any play, and there is no play. I just can't have blade play. I hate it. So I lost a little bit of the action that it came with, but I think that the trade-off is worth it for no play or anything. When I got it, the backspacer was kind of coming off a little bit over here, or it was separating at the scales. And I got all that sorted out, so it's good to go. Back to Jamie. It's good action. It's just not like dropping shut. I think if Riot made this knife today, it would be much more drop shutty. I do believe that. So, you know, it is an older knife. It's probably 2, 3, like maybe even 3 years old at this point, considering it's S35 and everything. So, yeah. Recommendations. I think this is going to be hard to get these days anyway, but I think if you look at it and you think it's a gorgeous knife, then I recommend it. It's Riot, guys. It's hard not to. Just don't expect this fuller to be perfect. Jamie said he has no problems, and I will say right-handed, now that I just did that, I have a much easier time. A much easier time flicking it. Even though oh yeah, because when you're right-handed, you're pushing away from the detent ball, so you're going to have less detent. Whereas when you're doing it left-handed, you're pushing down, you're pushing that blade into the detent ball, which would make it harder. So that does make sense, actually. But it's not a very rough fuller. It's very chamfered, so it's smooth, if you know what I mean. It doesn't catch. So yeah. Anyway, thank you to Jamie. I very much appreciate it, dude. Very, very cool knife here. This has been the Pena X Series Lanny's Clip Flipper Knife in S35BN, manufactured by Riot. Thank you, guys. I love you all. I appreciate you letting me rant and rave about nonsense all the time. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will catch you later.